yeah, I'm gonna try not to be too hard on myself. It is, I know in the past I've been very kind of brutal to myself in terms of my ability to run games. I think a lot of that in the past was a confidence thing, and this is less of a I don't think I know what I'm doing, as more of a I feel like I mean, I still don't feel like I know what I'm doing, but I feel like I know more of what I'm doing than back then when I used to be really harsh. And this is more a case of like, okay, now I need to analyze things in order to make it even better. Yes, I would like to talk today about frustrations that I have with my own style as a DM. So I think that's going to be an interesting topic to delve into. It was a difficult one to plan, because I could talk for ages about little things that I don't like, but and trying to boil that down to like key areas that I want to improve on is difficult. But I figured that what I'll do to start off with is just talk a little bit about what I do now, like the process that I go through, what I don't like about it, and the things that I intend to do, or at least there's one thing that I've decided that I'm going to do to try and improve on that. And I guess I'm hoping that in kind of tearing it wide open and letting you guys kind of have a look at the inner workings of my brain, maybe it'll help you guys in kind of understanding your own style a little bit more, or even like poke some of you into thinking, oh well, if Cam can do what he does with such little groundwork, then I can surely do it too, because that guy's a mess. So I kind of tackle things right now on a session by session basis. So usually when I sit down to prepare a Dungeons and Dragons session, I will generally only think about the session at hand, and that's good for a lot of reasons. I prefer that style mainly because one of the kind of axioms that I've come to put a lot of stock in is that session that you're about to run is the most important session that you're going to do. I think I mentioned it in a video. I think it was the DMing video. So yeah, I think it is important to kind of have that at the forefront of your mind, and that's why I do. I take things session by session, and I follow the tenets of the lazy dungeon master, because I think that is a very powerful tool set that can get you extremely well prepared to improvise very quickly. And then obviously I have a vague idea in my mind of wider story beats and the kind of things that I maybe want to happen, things that I may drop in as time goes by. So I'm not like going into every session completely blind, but at the same time I may be more blind than I possibly should be. So what don't I like about it? It's difficult talking about things from this perspective, because of course you see the kind of end product, and what a lot of people tell me is that they don't feel like it's too heavily improvised, but I know it in here, and I feel like I lean too heavily on improvisation, like, and the result of that is things sometimes, man, it's really hard to like describe the way that I feel without sounding like I'm going backwards, because I feel like I'm not in control, and while that's good in a way, because you want your players to have like the majority of the control of the story, like you're more just kind of an arbiter of the story and the rules, and kind of you process everything that happens and kind of keep the story flowing. I believe you do need some element of control in terms of the setting, like the area that they're in, your NPCs, and kind of like wider things that are going on. I feel like, and I'm dissatisfied with the fact that I feel like I'm flying by the seat of my pants all the time. And even when I've got frameworks like Stormlord's Wrath, like the actual like adventure underneath me to act as a platform, even then there are situations where I'm like, I don't really know what I'm doing. I'll be vague as possible in case anyone's not caught up and they want to. But there's a situation where essentially someone on a ship decided when their plans didn't come to fruition, they decided to throw themselves overboard. And I just felt like it was a bit of an odd, like, oh, okay. But did it make any sense? Like, after it was done, I was like, why did I make them do that? Like, there were other things that I could have, like, there were rowboats attached to the ship. They could have just taken one of them and left. Like, they weren't like, I'm gonna kill myself. They were more just like, I can't deal with this anymore, I need to leave. So, like, why the over dramatics? And I think that comes from a lack of a background understanding of who these characters are, what their motivations are, apart from like a very vague surface level, this is this person and this is what they're going to do. And then what happens is, like, if I reach a situation where I have to improvise and I feel like I don't really have control of what's going on, I look at the adventure, and if the adventure doesn't have the answers that I need, it all goes wrong. I guess the point that I'm making with that is I don't know enough about the world and what's immediately going on to feel like I can have appropriate reactions to what characters do. And while I think I'm quite good at making like situations and maybe like NPCs interesting and entertaining on the surface, that's all that it is. Like, it's all surface level. Overall, I feel like my DM style is very hollow. I think that's, if I was to boil it down into one word, it feels hollow. I suppose there is something that I need to explain, and I think this is something that I've come to realize as I've been kind of analyzing my method and stuff. And I guess I've been questioning, what do I want from a D&D game? Like, what is my goal when I run a game? Because some DMs and a lot of players are going to be more than happy to just be like, write out a basic scenario, here are some monsters that you might run into, let's just sit back, eat chips, drink Pepsi Max, and chill out and have a good time. That is fine. I have a game that is like that. Like, my Ravnica game is probably the closest thing to that, but that's kind of what I expect from that game, because we're all in person, we rarely see each other, so like it's a social driver. I've come to realize that the most important thing for me is the story, and I think that makes the more that I thought about that, the more that kind of made sense. Because to give a bit of a background on kind of how I've ended up in this hobby, like, Emily and I have spent an awful long time role playing on the internet. So kind of doing written role play. We both started, well, I mean, to kind of illustrate that, we met in a role play, so in like a role playing game that was being hosted on DeviantArt. We spent a long time on ERP. Yeah, boy. We spent a lot of time on Gaia Online, and from there we moved to Tumblr, and we spent a few years kind of doing Tumblr roleplay as well. So yeah, written roleplay has been a very, very big part of our lives. And I don't know, like, I almost feel like maybe when I discovered D&D, I thought of like, here's an opportunity to do roleplay that doesn't involve shitloads of writing. Like, here's a different way for me to experience the thing that I love, and kind of tried to completely separate myself from like writing as a vehicle for creating a story. And I wonder if that's kind of part of the reason why I've gravitated to such a prep light method. As I kind of evaluated this, I was like, well, maybe it's time for me to try and marry these two things. Like, why am I resisting this thing that took, you know, almost 20 years of my life? Maybe, like, I think I was on DeviantArt when I was like 13. Well, I've been role playing since before then, so I probably have been role playing online for about 20 years at this point. Like, why am I resisting this so much? Like, that's where my background is. That's where all my experience is. Why am I pushing this away? So, how can I make it better? So yeah, ultimately, I think it comes down to time. Like, I need to dedicate more time to adding detail to locations, NPCs, wider stories, the kind of things that may happen, etc., etc. And I think just having that stuff in mind could help with improvisation down the line. So what I think I want to do when I go into like a new arc of running a game, I'm going to maybe do something along the lines of essentially writing a backstory for the arc. So filling out a single page, just being like, what's going on? Assuming the players don't get involved. What's going on? What's the background? Who are the important people? What are they up to? What do they want? What are they after? And why? And I think that is the key thing and the key beat that I keep missing. Every time I run games, every time I prep games, every time I do anything, I always miss why. And I think part of that is because I'm always flying by the seat of my pants, and like there isn't enough in my head for me to be able to improvise effectively. So things just happen, and I can't think about the why until after the fact. So I'm always scrambling to put reason to action after the fact. And that doesn't feel right to me, because essentially what I'm doing there is entropy is being introduced into the storyline by this thing happening that I have to react to. And then if I'm retroactively applying reason to that action, I can then in the moment be like, right, okay, what action makes sense, or what motivation makes this action make sense to move the story back onto the path that I want? I don't know. I just feel like that's not right. Like, what do you guys think? I think it just proves the point that my NPCs are a bit wishy-washy. Like, it exemplifies the fact that my NPCs are hollow. If I can apply motivation to them after the fact, that means that their motivations weren't very strong to begin with. Another thing that I actually did today was I spoke to some of my friends who are players in games that I run, and I asked them two questions, which are probably two of the most difficult questions that I could have asked. I asked them, what do you like about the games that I run, and what do you want to see more of? And the overall consensus was that everyone enjoys the story. So, and everyone enjoys the fact that there's the unfolding of the story, which kind of showed me, okay, maybe there is a bit of a dissonance between what the players are experiencing and what I'm experiencing as a DM. But it was nice to think like, okay, well, we both want the same thing. I think overall, the important takeaway for me, for like all of this thinking that I've been doing, is like I say, ultimately it just comes down to time. I need to be willing to take more time to flesh out my scenarios, my adventure backgrounds before prepping games and basically allowing it to come into contact with players. Because when I don't, we end up with like things that we end up with what I consider to be hollow gameplay. And while that I'm really happy and really satisfied that my players are having a good time, I feel unfulfilled. Like, I feel like I'm not giving them the best experience that they can have with me as a DM. If we move on from Stormlord's Wrath to Sleeping Dragon's Wake, like if people want that after Stormlord's Wrath is done, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some time, and rather than doing what I've been doing at the moment, which is just reading the adventures, or like reading the scenarios and the quests and stuff, and then passing that into the 8 steps, what I think I'm going to do instead is read through the adventure and then essentially rewrite it. Do what I'm doing with Homebrew Adventures and fill a page of A4 with an adventure background. Kind of almost like reimagine the NPCs into what I think they are. Give them motivations that are relevant to me and the things that I think are going to work with Durabel. And I sort of half did that with Dragon of Icespire Peak. Like, kind of like working in Durabel's uncle into the denouement of the story, kind of having this whole thing where he plotted to take control of the dragon and do all of this stuff, and it was all a big ploy to like, and he was using the cult of Talos as basically a weapon to distract people while he tried to take over Cryovane. Like, that was great. And that was just because I'd taken the time to think about this villain and think about how his actions could tie in to what's going on. I essentially took that and made it my own. And then from there, it became Emily's own, because then Durabel could choose what to do with that information. But I think I've covered everything that I wanted to cover. I hope that this was interesting, useful. I hope I didn't rag on myself too hard. I don't think I did. I think everything that I said was fair. I think we've got some useful stuff, and I've definitely got a path forward where I can take what I've got and kind of a process that I'm comfortable with and that I'm confident with, and that has been proven through my past experience to create good games and make them better and cater them more to a narrative-driven experience that I think that everyone will be happy with, including me.